The galaxy wasn't always a stage for war. Before the Clone Wars erupted, it was a delicate web of alliances, trade routes, and political agreements held together by the Galactic Republic. However, beneath the surface, tensions brewed for decades, fueled by greed, corruption, and ambition. The Clone Wars didn't come out of nowhere. They were the result of a crumbling system, manipulated from within by a masterful puppeteer. At the heart of the Republic's decline was the Senate, an institution once envisioned as a beacon of democracy, but by this era plagued by bureaucracy and self-interest. Senators, representing entire star systems, grew more concerned with personal wealth and power than serving their citizens. Wealthy trade organizations, like the Trade Federation and the Techno-Union, exploited this corruption, using their vast resources to influence legislation. The Rimwood regions, where many of these organizations operated, suffered the most, enduring economic exploitation and neglect. Entire planets became disillusioned with the Republic, seeing it as a system designed to benefit the core worlds at their expense. Amid this turmoil, the Jedi Order stood as the Republic's guardians. They were peacekeepers and spiritual leaders, upholding justice and maintaining the balance of the Force. However, their role became increasingly politicized. Over generations, the Jedi shifted from independent mediators to enforcers of the Senate's will. This alignment made them a symbol of the Republic's failings in the eyes of the disenfranchised. Planets yearning for independence viewed the Jedi not as protectors, but as agents of oppression. Adding to the strain was the Republic's over-reliance on the Jedi for security. The absence of a standing military after the Ruusan Reformation had left the galaxy vulnerable. Instead of investing in planetary defense or fostering unity, the Republic leaned on the Jedi to mediate disputes and suppress insurrections. While the Jedi were formidable, they were not an army. Their order, already stretched thin, was now burdened with the impossible task of maintaining peace in a galaxy descending into chaos. These cracks in the Republic's foundation provided fertile ground for manipulation. Palpatine, an unassuming senator from Naboo, was no ordinary politician. Secretly Darth Sidious, a Sith Lord, he operated in the shadows, exploiting every weakness he could find. His brilliance lay in turning the Republic's strengths, its belief in democracy, its reliance on the Jedi, and its sprawling bureaucracy, into vulnerabilities. Palpatine positioned himself as a figure of stability, using carefully orchestrated crises to consolidate power. One such crisis was the Naboo blockade, an event that highlighted the Republic's inability to protect its member worlds. The Trade Federation's invasion of Naboo, sanctioned under legal technicalities, demonstrated how powerless the Senate had become in the face of corporate interests. This failure allowed Palpatine to ascend to the position of Supreme Chancellor, a move that would set his plans in motion. As the Republic faltered, separatist movements gained momentum. Disillusioned star systems, led by charismatic leaders like Count Dooku, demanded independence. Dooku himself was a former Jedi, disillusioned by the Order's alignment with the Republic. His defection and leadership of the Confederacy of Independent Systems added a layer of legitimacy to the separatist cause. Dooku's rhetoric struck a chord with many, painting the Republic as an archaic and corrupt entity that no longer served its people. Palpatine, orchestrating both sides of the conflict, ensured that tensions escalated. He covertly supported the separatists, supplying them with resources while feigning loyalty to the Republic. This dual manipulation created an environment where conflict was inevitable. His goal was not merely to provoke war, but to weaken both factions, paving the way for the Sith's ultimate rise. The Jedi, despite their wisdom, were blindsided by these developments. Their connection to the Force, once their greatest strength, was clouded by the growing power of the dark side. They sensed the imbalance but couldn't pinpoint its source. The increasing militarization of the Jedi Order, driven by the Republic's desperation, marked a significant departure from their principles. They became generals in a war they neither wanted nor understood, further alienating themselves from the people they sought to protect. As the Clone Wars loomed on the horizon, the galaxy was caught in a spiral of fear and uncertainty. The Republic's institutions were failing, the Jedi were stretched to their limits, and separatist sentiment was spreading like wildfire. The stage was set for a conflict that would engulf countless worlds, leaving behind a legacy of destruction and betrayal. Little did anyone realize that the war itself was never about victory or freedom. It was the ultimate tool for one man's rise to absolute power. The Clone Wars were not an accident. They were a meticulously crafted event, brought to life by the cunning and foresight of one man, Palpatine. Known to the galaxy as a patient and pragmatic leader, Palpatine was, in truth, Darth Sidious, the Sith Lord who would bring the galaxy to its knees. Every move he made served a dual purpose: to weaken his enemies and consolidate his power. His genius lay in creating chaos that only he could resolve, setting himself up as the solution to problems he had secretly engineered. Palpatine's plan began long before he ascended to the position of Supreme Chancellor. As Darth Sidious, he positioned himself as a shadowy figure pulling strings behind both the Republic and the Separatists. Through his alter ego, he guided the actions of powerful allies, such as Count Dooku, and manipulated influential organizations like the Trade Federation. His influence extended across the political and economic spectrums, ensuring that conflict became inevitable. The Naboo crisis was one of his earliest, most successful maneuvers. By orchestrating the Trade Federation's blockade and subsequent invasion, Palpatine exposed the Republic's weaknesses while presenting himself as a beacon of hope. This political theater enabled him to rise to Supreme Chancellor under the guise of restoring order. From this position, he gained access to the levers of power, reshaping the Republic's institutions to serve his grander ambitions. Behind the scenes, he nurtured the separatist movement through Count Dooku, his secret apprentice. Dooku, a former Jedi disillusioned with the Order's failings, became the charismatic leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems. While Dooku believed he was working toward a noble goal, he was another pawn in Palpatine's scheme. By controlling both sides of the conflict, Palpatine ensured a war that he could neither lose nor win, because the outcome was irrelevant. The true prize was the erosion of trust in both the Jedi and the Republic. Palpatine's manipulation extended to the Jedi Order itself. He capitalized on their role as peacekeepers and steered them into becoming generals. This shift was more than symbolic. It was a direct assault on their values. By leading armies and engaging in warfare, the Jedi distanced themselves from their spiritual foundation. They became what they were never meant to be: soldiers in a galactic conflict. This moral compromise played perfectly into Palpatine's narrative, eroding their credibility among the populace. Another of Palpatine's masterstrokes was the creation of the Clone Army. The army's origins were deliberately shrouded in mystery, with Jedi Master Sidious conveniently positioned as the fall guy. In truth, the clones were commissioned by Sidious and Dooku to ensure absolute control. The inhibitor chips implanted in every clone served as a deadly failsafe, transforming loyal soldiers into tools of destruction at a single command. The Jedi believed the army to be their salvation, but in reality, it was a dagger held to their throats. Palpatine's genius was not just in his manipulations, but in his ability to mask his true intentions. He presented himself as a reluctant leader, burdened by the weight of the galaxy's troubles. His calm demeanor and reassuring words disguised his role as the architect of those very troubles. To the galaxy, he was a hero. To his enemies, an enigma. Even the Jedi, with all their wisdom, failed to see through the veil of deceit. As the war progressed, Palpatine consolidated more power under the guise of emergency measures. The Senate granted him authority that no one man should wield, believing it necessary to win the war. By the time his intentions became clear, it was too late. The Republic was no more, and the Emperor stood unchallenged. Palpatine's design was a masterpiece of manipulation, a blend of patience and ruthlessness. He understood the galaxy's fears and exploited them with surgical precision. By the time the galaxy realized what had happened, the dark hand behind the curtain had become the iron fist on the throne. Kamino, a remote water-covered planet, stood far from the politics and strife of the galactic core. To most of the galaxy, it was little more than a footnote in astronavigation. Yet, in its vast, stormy oceans, hidden within the sleek architecture of its advanced cloning facilities, lay the genesis of a grand military force that would forever change the course of galactic history. The creation of the clone army was not merely a scientific achievement, but a carefully constructed enigma, blending cutting-edge technology with moral ambiguity. The Kaminoans, known for their expertise in genetic engineering, were commissioned to develop the army under highly secretive circumstances. Their client was Jedi Master Sifo Dyas, or so it seemed. Sifo Dyas's involvement was real, but incomplete. His vision for the clones as a protective force was co-opted by Darth Sidious and Count Dooku. Dooku, under the guise of Darth Tyrannus, manipulated the Kaminoans, ensuring that the army served Sidious's darker purpose. Jango Fett, the galaxy's most notorious bounty hunter, was chosen as the genetic template. His selection was no accident. Jango's combination of skill, independence, and ruthlessness made him ideal for crafting soldiers capable of executing complex orders with unwavering loyalty. Fett's agreement with the Kaminoans included the creation of a single, unaltered clone, his son, Boba, a poignant reminder that even in a mechanized system, personal stakes lingered. The genetic engineering process on Kamino was a marvel and a cautionary tale. Kaminoan scientists took Jango's DNA and manipulated it to enhance obedience and suppress individuality. The clones were programmed to follow orders without question, yet they retained enough independence to be effective on the battlefield. Accelerated aging ensured a steady supply of soldiers, but it also raised ethical concerns about the value placed on their lives. This moral tension only deepened with the addition of inhibitor chips, small biomechanical implants designed to enforce compliance. Officially, these chips were marketed as safeguards against rogue behavior. In reality, they were a sinister failsafe embedded at Sidious's command. The chips ensured the clones would carry out Order 66, turning on their Jedi generals with lethal precision. The very army entrusted to the Jedi was designed to destroy them. For the Kaminoans, the ethics of their work seemed secondary. Their focus was on the perfection of the craft. To them, the clones were a product, a marvel of bioengineering, ready for deployment. They viewed their work with clinical detachment, admiring the efficiency of their creation while disregarding its implications. The clones were soldiers, not individuals, and their lives were measured in terms of military utility. The Jedi's involvement in the clone army's deployment added another layer of complexity. The Jedi, traditionally peacekeepers, found themselves commanding an army born of secrecy and moral compromise. While some, like Obi-Wan Kenobi, questioned the origins of the clones, the Order as a whole accepted them out of necessity. The galaxy was at war, and the clones were the only force capable of matching the Separatists' droid armies. Despite their origins, the clones themselves emerged as deeply human. They formed bonds, developed unique personalities, and often exhibited remarkable bravery. Soldiers like Captain Rex and Fives demonstrated that beneath the genetic conditioning lay individuals capable of independent thought and moral action. This humanity stood in stark contrast to their programmed purpose, highlighting the paradox of their existence. The clone army was a triumph of science and a tragedy of manipulation. It represented the galaxy's capacity for innovation while exposing its vulnerability to moral compromise. Kamino's secret labyrinth of cloning facilities was not just a birthplace for soldiers, it was the cradle of a conflict that would consume the galaxy. As the clones marched to war, their origins remained a mystery to most, a carefully guarded secret hiding the strings pulled by Darth Sidious. This secret, when finally revealed, would shake the galaxy to its core. The Jedi Order had long been revered as the galaxy's spiritual and moral compass, their wisdom drawn from centuries of connection to the Force. Yet by the time of the Clone Wars, that wisdom had dimmed. The Jedi Council, once vigilant and introspective, had become increasingly detached from its ancient teachings and prophetic traditions. They were blind to the warnings etched in the Force, distracted by their alliance with the Galactic Republic and the demands of war. Ancient Jedi prophecies, preserved in holocrons and temples across the galaxy, spoke of great upheavals, betrayals, and the rise of darkness. These prophecies were often cryptic, their meanings unfolding only through time and reflection. One such prophecy, the Chosen One's emergence, loomed over the Jedi during this turbulent era. It foretold a being who would bring balance to the Force, yet its implications were deeply misunderstood. The Council, rather than seeking clarity, treated these warnings as relics of an ancient past, detached from their current struggles. This dismissal of prophecy revealed a deeper flaw in the Jedi Order. Over centuries, the Jedi had shifted their focus from spiritual introspection to active governance. They served the Republic with increasing zeal, aligning themselves with political power rather than maintaining their independence. This shift came at a cost. Their connection to the mystical underpinnings of the Force grew weaker. They no longer meditated on the deeper meanings of the Force's will, but instead sought to enforce the Republic's laws. Palpatine exploited this vulnerability. As the dark side spread its influence, the Jedi's ability to sense danger became clouded. They felt the imbalance growing, but could not pinpoint its source. The Sith, long believed extinct, operated in plain sight, their presence masked by the very shadows the Jedi were sworn to illuminate. Even when evidence suggested otherwise, the Council hesitated to act decisively. Their reliance on logic and consensus often overrode their instincts, leaving them paralyzed in moments requiring bold action. Their faith in the Republic only deepened their plight. The Jedi believed the Republic's democratic institutions would endure any challenge, and they placed their trust in the Senate's authority. Yet the Republic was already crumbling under corruption and corporate influence. The Jedi failed to see that by tying their fate to the Republic, they were binding themselves to a sinking ship. They became enforcers of a flawed system, rather than the guardians of justice they were meant to be. This misplaced trust extended to their role in the Clone Wars. The Jedi assumed command of the Grand Army of the Republic, believing they were defending the galaxy from tyranny. In reality, they were playing into Palpatine's hands, exhausting their resources and moral standing in a conflict engineered to destroy them. Their participation in the war alienated them from the people they sought to protect, casting them as warriors rather than peacekeepers. Anakin Skywalker's journey epitomized the consequences of the Council's negligence. Identified as the Chosen One, he was brought into the Order, but never truly understood or nurtured. The Council viewed him with suspicion, sensing his potential for both greatness and danger, yet they failed to guide him effectively. They saw him as a means to an end, a figure destined to fulfill the prophecy without fully grasping what that prophecy demanded. The Jedi's downfall was not solely the result of external forces. Their detachment from their spiritual roots, their alliance with political power, and their dismissal of ancient warnings all contributed to their undoing. The Force spoke to them through visions, signs, and prophecy, yet they ignored its call, distracted by the immediate demands of war and governance. When the dark side finally revealed itself, it was too late. Prophecies, while cryptic, are meant to provoke thought and preparation. The Jedi, in their arrogance, believed themselves immune to failure. Their inability to heed these ancient warnings marked the beginning of their end. As the galaxy spiraled into chaos, the Jedi Order, once the beacon of light, faded into the shadows, leaving the Force to find balance through the most unexpected of means. Jango Fett's name is synonymous with the clone army, but his story stretches far beyond his role as a genetic template. A bounty hunter of unparalleled skill and a man shaped by the harsh realities of the galaxy, Jango's selection for the clone army was as much a testament to his abilities as it was to his complex ties to Mandalorian culture. His legacy, intertwined with the Republic's greatest military force, reveals the layers of intention and intrigue behind his involvement. Jango Fett's early life was marked by tragedy and survival. Orphaned during a Mandalorian civil conflict, he was raised among warriors, learning the ways of combat and resilience. These formative years forged him into a survivor and strategist, someone who thrived in chaos. By the time he gained galactic notoriety as a bounty hunter, his reputation was cemented as a man who could outfight and outthink nearly anyone he encountered. When Count Dooku approached Jango with the offer to become the genetic foundation for the clone army, it wasn't merely his physical prowess that made him the ideal candidate. His independence, tactical genius, and unshakable discipline set him apart from other mercenaries. He wasn't just a fighter, he was a professional who operated with precision and control. These qualities were crucial in crafting soldiers capable of meeting the Republic's military demands. The Kaminoans, renowned for their genetic expertise, appreciated Jango's unique qualities. His DNA was robust, adaptable, and suitable for the rigorous engineering required to create the clone army. Jango's natural abilities provided a foundation for loyalty and competence, traits enhanced through genetic modification. The clones inherited his resilience, but their programming ensured obedience, a stark contrast to Jango's fiercely independent nature. While Jango's professional qualities are evident, his ties to Mandalorian culture add complexity to his story. The Mandalorians, known as some of the galaxy's most formidable warriors, are defined by their rich history and code of honor. Yet Jango's connection to this heritage is disputed. During the Clone Wars, the pacifist regime of Duchess Satine Kryze disavowed him as a Mandalorian, dismissing his use of Mandalorian armor as mere appropriation. However, others argue that Jango embodied the warrior spirit of Mandalore, even if his methods were unconventional. This ambiguity adds a layer of intrigue to Jango's selection. The Mandalorian aesthetic and legacy infused the clone army with an air of invincibility, even if the clones themselves were far removed from the cultural ideals of Mandalore. For the Republic, the symbolism of Mandalorian strength was as valuable as the clone's actual abilities. For Jango, his role in the army's creation seemed purely transactional. He sought wealth and the promise of an unaltered clone, Boba, who would become his legacy. Boba Fett, Jango's son and genetic duplicate, represented more than a personal desire for family. In Jango's eyes, Boba was his way of preserving his individuality in a galaxy that often sought to erase it. While the clones were programmed for obedience, Boba was free to chart his own path, reflecting the dichotomy between Jango's personal values and the purpose of the army created in his image. Jango's death at the hands of Jedi Master Mace Windu during the Battle of Geonosis marked the end of his direct influence on galactic events. Yet his impact endured through the millions of soldiers who bore his face. The clone army was a monument to his legacy, even as it served an agenda he likely never fully understood. Jango's role, far from being a simple transaction, was a critical piece of a larger design orchestrated by forces far beyond his control. The man behind the helmet remains a figure of fascination. Was Jango merely a tool in the machinations of the Sith, or did he see himself as a master of his own fate? His story, steeped in skill, tragedy, and a shadowed connection to Mandalorian heritage, continues to spark questions about individuality, legacy, and the cost of survival in a galaxy consumed by war. Count Dooku was a figure of stark contrasts, a former Jedi Master, a charismatic separatist leader, and a shadowy Sith apprentice. Known to his allies as a visionary and to his enemies as a traitor, Dooku walked the line between idealism and manipulation. Beneath his calm demeanor and regal presence, he was Darth Tyrannus, the apprentice of Darth Sidious, playing a dangerous game in the galactic conflict. His dual roles as Sith and leader of the Confederacy of Independent Systems were not only tools of Sidious's grand design, but also expressions of Dooku's own complex ideology. Once a respected Jedi, Dooku's disillusionment with the Order and the Republic marked the turning point in his life. As a Jedi, he had seen the corruption festering within the Senate and the Council's inability to act decisively. The death of his former apprentice, Qui-Gon Jinn, deepened his conviction that the Jedi had lost their way, prioritizing politics over their connection to the Force. Dooku's departure from the Order was a rejection of its complacency, but it also set him on a darker path. His alliance with Sidious, however, was not born purely out of ambition. While Sidious sought domination, Dooku envisioned reform. He believed the Republic had become irredeemable, a bloated bureaucracy in need of dismantling. The separatist movement he led was, in his mind, a necessary revolution, a means to free the galaxy from the Republic's grip and create a new order based on strength and efficiency. To many within the Confederacy, Dooku was an inspiring leader, a beacon of hope for systems that felt abandoned by Coruscant. Yet, as Darth Tyrannus, Dooku's idealism was twisted by the dark side. Sidious exploited his disillusionment, offering power as the solution to his frustrations. In truth, Dooku was never more than a pawn in Sidious's scheme, tasked with sowing chaos and ensuring the Clone Wars served their ultimate purpose, the destruction of the Jedi and the rise of the Empire. Though he wielded considerable influence, Dooku was always working toward goals that benefited Sidious, not his own vision. Dooku's ideological divergence from Sidious was most evident in his leadership of the Separatists. While Sidious viewed the Confederacy as a tool to destabilize the Republic, Dooku saw it as a legitimate alternative. He forged alliances with corporations like the Trade Federation and the Techno-Union, securing resources for the war effort. These alliances, while pragmatic, also highlighted his willingness to compromise his ideals. Dooku justified these actions as necessary sacrifices, but they exposed the moral ambiguity of his revolution. Dooku's relationship with the Sith doctrine was similarly complicated. Unlike Sidious, who embraced the Sith's philosophy of betrayal and domination, Dooku retained a sense of aristocratic order. He was not motivated by chaos, but by a desire to impose his vision of stability. This divergence made him a flawed Sith, one whose loyalty to Sidious was conditional and whose plans hinted at potential rebellion. Yet Dooku underestimated Sidious's cunning and the inevitability of the rule of two. The end of Dooku's journey was a stark reminder of his place in Sidious's plans. During the Battle of Coruscant, Dooku faced Anakin Skywalker in a duel orchestrated by Sidious. When Anakin bested Dooku, Sidious ordered his execution, casting aside his apprentice without hesitation. In his final moments, Dooku realized the extent of Sidious's manipulation and the futility of his ambitions. He had been a tool, used to create the very chaos he sought to control. Count Dooku's legacy is one of tragedy and contradiction. He was a man who sought justice but was consumed by his thirst for power. His ideological divergence from Sidious added depth to his character, illustrating the complexities of the Sith dynamic. While he may have believed he could outmaneuver his master, Dooku's fatal flaw was his inability to see that the Sith's true nature would never allow his vision to succeed. His shadowy gambit ended as all Sith ambitions do, in betrayal and failure. The clone army of the Republic stood as a marvel of genetic engineering and military efficiency. Born in the sterile facilities of Kamino, these soldiers were crafted for a singular purpose: to fight and win the Republic's wars. Yet beneath the helmets and armor lay a deep and unsettling question about their identity. Were these men truly individuals, or were they slaves to a system that denied them autonomy? The clones were bred from the genetic template of Jango Fett, their physical and mental capabilities enhanced to create an ideal soldier. Each clone was conditioned for discipline, loyalty, and unwavering obedience. The Kaminoans, in their clinical detachment, regarded them as tools, no more unique than the weapons they wielded. This perspective was reinforced by the inhibitor chips implanted in their brains, a sinister safeguard designed to ensure their compliance with orders, no matter how reprehensible. Despite these constraints, the clones were not devoid of individuality. The camaraderie they developed on the battlefield, the nicknames they gave one another, and the personal touches added to their armor all reflected a desire to assert their humanity. Soldiers like Captain Rex, Fives, and Echo became symbols of this individuality, showing that the clones were more than the sum of their genetic programming. They forged bonds with their Jedi commanders, fought with remarkable ingenuity, and displayed acts of courage that transcended the expectations of their creators. However, this individuality was overshadowed by the grim reality of their existence. The inhibitor chips, while dormant for much of the war, were a silent reminder of the clones' lack of agency. When Order 66 was issued, the chips activated, turning these loyal soldiers into executioners of the Jedi. This moment, one of the darkest in galactic history, highlighted the tragedy of the clones. Their bonds with the Jedi, built over years of mutual trust, were erased in an instant, replaced by an unyielding compulsion to obey. The aftermath of Order 66 left the clones in a precarious position. For many, their sense of identity was shattered. They were soldiers without a war, men who had fought valiantly only to be discarded by the newly formed empire. Some, like Rex and a small group of defectors, managed to resist the influence of their chips, carving out lives beyond the battlefield. Others were absorbed into the Empire's machinery, their individuality further stripped away as they became tools of tyranny. The ethical implications of the clone army's creation and use are profound. The Republic, ostensibly a bastion of democracy and freedom, relied on a force of engineered beings who had no choice in their fate. The Jedi, despite their moral principles, accepted the clones as allies without questioning the morality of their existence. This complicity underscores the compromises made in the face of war and the ways in which noble ideals can be eroded by pragmatism. The clones' story is one of both triumph and tragedy. They were capable of remarkable acts of heroism, yet their lives were defined by a system that denied them the freedom to choose their own path. Their individuality shone through in moments of defiance and camaraderie, but the weight of their programming was a constant shadow. As the galaxy moved forward, the legacy of the clones served as a haunting reminder of the cost of war and the ethical questions left unanswered in its wake. Through their struggles, the clones challenged the very idea of what it meant to be human. They were more than soldiers, yet less than free, a paradox that remains one of the most compelling aspects of their story. Their journey, marked by bravery, loyalty, and ultimately tragedy, continues to resonate as a powerful exploration of identity and agency in a galaxy at war. Ahsoka Tano's story is one of transformation and defiance. Introduced as Anakin Skywalker's Padawan, she began her journey as an eager, determined learner, often reflecting her master's fiery spirit and unorthodox methods. Yet unlike Anakin, Ahsoka's path was defined by her ability to see beyond the Jedi Order's rigid structure, culminating in her decision to walk away from it entirely. Her departure marked her not as a Jedi failure, but as a beacon of moral clarity in a galaxy spiraling into chaos. From the outset, Ahsoka's relationship with Anakin was pivotal to her development. As his apprentice, she learned courage and resourcefulness, but also witnessed the darker edges of his personality. Anakin's willingness to bend the rules and embrace emotional intensity left a deep impression on her, shaping her approach to leadership and decision-making. However, Ahsoka maintained a balance that Anakin often struggled to achieve. Where he leaned toward anger and attachment, she cultivated empathy and critical thinking, setting her apart from her peers. The trial that forced Ahsoka to leave the Jedi Order was a defining moment in her life. Falsely accused of terrorism and betrayed by the very institution she had sworn to serve, Ahsoka faced a profound reckoning. Although her name was eventually cleared, the damage was irreparable. The Jedi Council's willingness to cast her aside exposed the Order's growing detachment from its principles, prioritizing politics and appearances over justice. Ahsoka's choice to leave wasn't born out of anger, but out of a deep sense of disillusionment. She realized she could no longer trust an institution that had lost its way. Her departure was a quiet but profound act of defiance. By leaving, Ahsoka rejected the Jedi Council's hypocrisy and reaffirmed her own values. This choice freed her from the constraints of the Jedi Code, allowing her to navigate the galaxy with a renewed sense of purpose. Unlike Anakin, who clung to the Jedi despite his frustrations, Ahsoka had the strength to walk away, demonstrating a resilience that her former master lacked. In many ways, Ahsoka became a counterbalance to Anakin. Her decision to leave the Order highlighted the very flaws that would later contribute to his fall. While Anakin succumbed to the dark side's promises of control and power, Ahsoka chose self-determination, even at great personal cost. Her independence and moral clarity stood in stark contrast to Anakin's growing internal conflict. She represented the potential for growth and balance, a path he could have followed, but ultimately didn't. Ahsoka's journey didn't end with her departure. As the Clone Wars continued, she played a critical role in uncovering the truths that the Jedi and the Republic had ignored. Her actions during the Siege of Mandalore demonstrated her ability to lead and inspire without the weight of the Jedi Council's authority. Her confrontation with Maul, and later her survival of Order 66, solidified her place as one of the galaxy's most capable and principled figures. Her post-war life further underscored her unique position. She wasn't bound by the Jedi's failures, nor was she seduced by the dark side. Instead, she charted a path of her own, aiding the nascent rebellion and mentoring figures like Ezra Bridger. Ahsoka's presence in the galaxy was a reminder of what the Jedi could have been, an institution focused on compassion, justice, and the greater good, unshackled by bureaucracy and dogma. Ahsoka Tano's story remains one of the most compelling in Star Wars. Her decision to leave the Jedi Order was a moment of courage and clarity that defined her character and set her apart in a galaxy consumed by conflict. She was a moral counterweight to Anakin Skywalker, a figure who showed that walking away from a broken system could lead to a greater sense of purpose. Through her choices and actions, Ahsoka became a symbol of hope, resilience, and the enduring power of integrity. The Jedi Order, once revered as the galaxy's spiritual and moral compass, found itself increasingly disconnected from its core principles during the final years of the Republic. This detachment was not merely a result of political entanglement, but also a consequence of the dark side's growing influence. As Darth Sidious's plans unfolded, the Jedi's ability to perceive threats and interpret the will of the Force diminished. Their foresight, once a powerful tool, became clouded, leaving them vulnerable to manipulation and ultimately leading to their downfall. The dark side's interference in the Force was both subtle and pervasive. Sidious, a master of deception, had long since woven his influence into the fabric of galactic affairs. His presence was like a shadow cast over the Force, obscuring the light and distorting the Jedi's ability to see clearly. This phenomenon, often referenced by Yoda and Mace Windu, created a sense of unease within the Council. They knew something was amiss but couldn't pinpoint the source of the disturbance. This clouding of the Force wasn't an accident. It was a deliberate strategy. Sidious's mastery of the dark side allowed him to shroud his true identity and intentions. He manipulated events from the shadows, ensuring that the Jedi were always reacting rather than acting. This reactive stance further eroded their confidence and effectiveness. The Jedi, who prided themselves on their wisdom and foresight, became blind to the web of deception enveloping them. The Clone Wars exacerbated this problem. The Jedi's role as generals in the conflict pulled them away from their spiritual roots and deeper connection to the Force. Instead of meditating on the currents of destiny, they were drawn into the chaos of battle, forced to make decisions that prioritized military strategy over moral clarity. This shift not only weakened their ability to sense the dark side, but also played directly into Sidious's hands. By embedding the Jedi within the machinery of war, he ensured their focus was divided and their vulnerability increased. The loss of foresight wasn't just a tactical disadvantage, it was a moral crisis. The Jedi, who had once served as guardians of peace, found themselves complicit in a war that contradicted their core values. Their inability to see the true nature of the conflict, engineered by Sidious to destroy them, highlighted the extent of their disconnection from the Force. They became blind to the deeper truths, such as the nature of the clone army and the Sith's resurgence. The clouding of their vision also led to critical missteps. The Council failed to recognize Anakin Skywalker's internal struggles and growing attachment to Palpatine. They misjudged their own role in the Republic's decline, assuming that their presence within the Senate was enough to maintain balance. Even when presented with warnings, such as Qui-Gon Jinn's belief in the Chosen One prophecy, the Jedi dismissed them as speculative, unwilling to adapt their perspective. The culmination of this blindness was Order 66, a moment of brutal clarity that exposed the depth of their failure. The Jedi's inability to foresee this betrayal was not merely a result of the inhibitor chips hidden in the clones, but also of their spiritual myopia. The dark side's influence had rendered them incapable of understanding the scale of the threat they faced. By the time the truth became apparent, it was too late. The story of the Jedi's waning connection to the Force is a cautionary tale about the dangers of complacency and detachment. Their failure to adapt to the shifting currents of the galaxy allowed the dark side to exploit their vulnerabilities. Yet within this tragedy lies a poignant reminder of the Force's complexity. Even in their darkest moments, the Jedi's legacy endured, carried forward by those who refused to let the light be extinguished. Their story is a testament to the ongoing struggle between light and dark, a struggle that continues to shape the galaxy. The Jedi Council, once a revered symbol of wisdom and balance, became a microcosm of the Order's gradual decline. As the galaxy changed around them, the Council's inability, or unwillingness, to adapt proved to be one of their greatest failings. Rigid in their dogma and blind to the shifting dynamics of the Republic, they became ensnared in a web of their own making, their arrogance leaving them vulnerable to the dark side's manipulations. At the heart of the Jedi Council's failure was their unwavering adherence to tradition. The Council saw themselves as the ultimate interpreters of the Force, viewing their centuries-old practices as sacrosanct. Yet this rigidity came at a cost. As the galaxy faced new challenges, from the rise of corporate powers to the deepening corruption within the Senate, the Jedi's refusal to evolve made them increasingly out of touch. Instead of addressing the root causes of the Republic's decay, they clung to their established roles as peacekeepers and advisors, even as those roles became less relevant. The Council's detachment from the galaxy's realities was further exacerbated by their isolation. The Jedi Temple, a towering bastion on Coruscant, became both a sanctuary and a prison. The very structure that symbolized their authority also shielded them from the struggles of ordinary beings. This detachment led to decisions that often appeared cold and calculated, rather than compassionate and just. When conflicts arose, the Council viewed them through the lens of their code, rather than the lived experiences of those affected. This inflexibility was particularly evident in their handling of Anakin Skywalker. Recognized as a prodigious talent with unparalleled potential, Anakin was brought into the Order under controversial circumstances. The Council's skepticism of his Chosen One status and their reluctance to fully embrace him created a tension that defined his Jedi career. Rather than nurture his unique abilities and address his emotional struggles, the Council sought to mold him into their vision of a perfect Jedi. This approach only deepened Anakin's feelings of isolation and resentment. The Council's arrogance extended to their relationship with the Senate. Entrusted as guardians of peace, the Jedi often operated as enforcers of the Republic's will, believing their moral authority was sufficient to counterbalance political corruption. However, by entangling themselves in the Republic's bureaucracy, they compromised their independence. The Clone Wars further entrenched this dynamic, with the Jedi taking on military leadership roles that were fundamentally at odds with their spiritual mission. Their willingness to serve as generals blurred the line between protectors and participants, eroding their credibility. Perhaps the most glaring example of the Council's misjudgment was their dismissal of warnings from within their own ranks. Qui-Gon Jinn's unconventional approach to the Force, which emphasized intuition and adaptability, was often dismissed as heretical. His belief in Anakin's destiny as the Chosen One was met with skepticism, even as evidence mounted. This pattern repeated itself with figures like Ahsoka Tano, whose departure from the Order underscored the Council's inability to self-reflect or admit fault. The Council's greatest failing, however, lay in their inability to recognize the growing threat posed by the dark side. While they were aware of a disturbance in the Force, their arrogance led them to believe they could contain it. They underestimated the cunning of Darth Sidious and overestimated their own ability to navigate the complexities of the Clone Wars. By the time they began to grasp the extent of the Sith's influence, their fate was already sealed. The Jedi Council's downfall serves as a stark reminder of the dangers of complacency and hubris. Their adherence to rigid dogma, combined with their detachment from the galaxy's evolving needs, created a vacuum that the dark side was all too eager to exploit. In their pursuit of maintaining order, the Council lost sight of the principles that had once defined them. This failure not only led to the collapse of the Jedi Order, but also paved the way for the rise of the Empire. Their story is a cautionary tale of what happens when institutions prioritize tradition over growth and authority over understanding. When the Jedi took up the mantle of generals in the Clone Wars, it marked a profound shift in their role within the galaxy. Once heralded as keepers of peace and champions of the Force, they became embroiled in the complexities of warfare. This transformation not only tested their moral resolve, but also accelerated their spiritual decline, forcing them into roles that clashed with the core tenets of their order. The Jedi's involvement in the war was not a decision made lightly. With the Republic on the brink of collapse and the Separatists threatening galactic stability, the Jedi felt compelled to intervene. However, their choice to lead the Republic's armies, clones bred for battle, came with unforeseen consequences. The Order, which had once stood apart from political and military machinations, now found itself at the center of them. This entanglement blurred the lines between protectors and combatants, creating an identity crisis that reverberated through every level of their organization. One of the most significant challenges the Jedi faced was reconciling their teachings with the realities of war. The Jedi Code emphasized non-violence, compassion, and the sanctity of life. Yet as generals, they were required to command troops, strategize battles, and make decisions that often led to mass casualties. This dichotomy created a dissonance within the Order, as Jedi were forced to suppress their principles in favor of practicality. For many, this erosion of their moral foundation became an inescapable burden. The clones themselves added another layer of complexity. Bred for obedience and engineered for war, the clones were seen by many Jedi as tools of the Republic's defense. However, as the war progressed, individual Jedi began to form personal bonds with their soldiers. The clones were no longer faceless assets. They were individuals with names, personalities, and aspirations. These relationships made the Jedi's role even more fraught. How could they reconcile their responsibility to protect life with their orders to send these soldiers into perilous battles? For Jedi like Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano, this tension was deeply personal, as they struggled to balance their duty to the Republic with their loyalty to their troops. The war also forced the Jedi to make compromises that undermined their credibility. In their efforts to support the Republic, they aligned themselves with political leaders and military strategies that often ran counter to their ideals. For example, their tacit approval of questionable tactics, such as espionage, assassinations, and collateral damage, further distanced them from their original mission. Over time, these actions eroded the trust the public once had in the Jedi, painting them as enforcers of the Senate rather than impartial defenders of peace. The spiritual toll of the war was perhaps the most profound consequence of the Jedi's involvement. Immersed in violence and consumed by the urgency of battle, they lost their connection to the Force's deeper currents. Meditation and introspection, once cornerstones of their practice, became luxuries they could scarcely afford. The dark side's influence, already growing through the machinations of Darth Sidious, thrived in this environment of conflict and despair. Many Jedi found themselves questioning their purpose, their methods, and their very identity. The Clone Wars revealed the Jedi's vulnerability in a way no previous challenge had. Their moral dilemmas, compounded by the strain of leadership and the horrors of war, exposed the fragility of their principles when tested against the harsh realities of a galaxy at war. These struggles not only weakened the Jedi individually, but also fractured the Order as a whole. By the time the war reached its devastating conclusion, the Jedi were no longer the same noble guardians they had once been. Their moral erosion had set the stage for their ultimate downfall, leaving behind a legacy of choices that would haunt the galaxy for generations to come. Master Yoda, the enduring symbol of wisdom in the Jedi Order, faced some of the most profound dilemmas in the final years of the Republic. As Grand Master, his every decision carried immense weight, yet his actions during the Clone Wars often raise questions. Was he quietly guiding events with a deeper understanding of the Force, or did his hesitations reflect a passive resignation to the inevitable? Yoda's connection to the Force was unparalleled. With centuries of experience and a profound spiritual bond, he often sensed the subtle ripples of destiny long before others. However, even Yoda was not immune to the dark side's shroud. Throughout the Clone Wars, he frequently voiced concerns about the growing imbalance within the Force, but his cryptic warnings often lacked actionable clarity. His inability to see through the Sith's intricate web left him grappling with doubt, an uncharacteristic burden for someone of his stature. One of Yoda's most debated decisions was his handling of Anakin Skywalker. From the outset, Yoda expressed reservations about Anakin's place within the Order. The boy's strong attachments and emotional intensity were red flags that Yoda could not ignore. Yet despite these misgivings, Yoda ultimately supported Anakin's training, perhaps understanding that the Chosen One prophecy demanded a unique path. This cautious acceptance of Anakin's role highlights Yoda's willingness to trust in the Force, even when the outcomes were uncertain. Later, as Anakin's struggles became more pronounced, Yoda's guidance grew even more ambiguous. His advice to Anakin during moments of personal crisis, such as the Jedi Council's refusal to grant Anakin the rank of Master or his visions of Padme's fate, often came across as detached. Yoda's encouragement to let go of attachments, though rooted in Jedi philosophy, failed to address the complexities of Anakin's inner turmoil. Some interpret this as Yoda adhering strictly to doctrine, while others wonder if he sensed Anakin's fall and chose to let events play out as part of the Force's greater plan. Yoda's role in Ahsoka Tano's departure from the Order is another critical moment that invites scrutiny. When Ahsoka was falsely accused and subsequently exonerated, Yoda extended an olive branch, inviting her to return. Yet his demeanor during her trial and subsequent decision to leave was notably reserved. It's possible that Yoda foresaw Ahsoka's importance beyond the Jedi Order and allowed her departure as a means of protecting her from the darkness he sensed ahead. Her survival of Order 66 and pivotal role in later events lend credence to this theory. The war itself placed Yoda in an impossible position. As a general, he reluctantly embraced a role that conflicted with his spiritual calling, Yet, his decisions often reflected an understanding of the war's larger stakes. Yoda's cryptic statements about the Force's will, combined with his actions during the Clone Wars, suggest that he saw himself as a custodian of balance, rather than an active participant in the conflict. His journey to Moraband, the ancient Sith homeworld, revealed visions of the Order's demise and a path forward through the guidance of the Force. Ultimately, Yoda's leadership was defined by a delicate balance between action and restraint. His decisions were not born of apathy, but of a profound belief in the Force's guiding hand. While some may view his approach as passive resignation, others see it as a testament to his unwavering trust in the larger cosmic plan. Yoda's dilemmas encapsulate the complexities of leadership in a time of profound uncertainty, leaving his legacy as both a cautionary tale and a source of enduring wisdom. The Sith's rule of two is a philosophy born of destruction and ambition, a doctrine that has defined their actions and internal conflicts for generations. Established by Darth Bane, it was designed to ensure the Sith's survival through secrecy and strength. During the Clone Wars, this philosophy not only shaped the actions of Darth Sidious and Count Dooku, but also underscored the nature of their manipulations and ultimate goals. The rule of two dictated that there would always be a Sith master and an apprentice. The master would embody the pinnacle of Sith knowledge and power, while the apprentice would learn and grow, eventually challenging the master for supremacy. This inevitable betrayal was not a flaw, but a feature. By forcing the apprentice to overcome the master, the Sith ensured that their ranks would always be led by the strongest and most cunning individuals. Darth Sidious adhered to this doctrine with meticulous precision, even as he manipulated it for his own purposes. His mastery of the rule of two was evident in his relationship with Count Dooku, whom he molded into Darth Tyrannus. Dooku, for all his power and cunning, was always a placeholder in Sidious's grand design. Sidious's real objective was the seduction of Anakin Skywalker, whose potential far surpassed that of any Sith before him. Dooku's role in this dynamic is particularly illuminating. As Sidious's apprentice, Dooku was instrumental in orchestrating the Clone Wars. His defection from the Jedi Order and leadership of the Separatists were carefully engineered to destabilize the Republic and position Sidious as its savior. Yet, despite his apparent importance, Dooku was expendable. Sidious's plan always required a more powerful apprentice, one capable of helping him cement his control over the galaxy. Dooku's eventual betrayal at the hands of Anakin was not a deviation from the rule of two, but its natural conclusion. The Sith's doctrine also shaped their interactions with the Jedi and the broader galaxy. By operating in the shadows and fostering mistrust, the Sith capitalized on the Jedi's weaknesses. The rule of two emphasized deception and subtlety, ensuring that their presence remained hidden until it was too late. Sidious's manipulation of both the Jedi and the Republic is a testament to the doctrine's effectiveness. Every move he made, from his guise as Chancellor Palpatine to his orchestration of Order 66, was steeped in the philosophy of outmaneuvering his opponents without revealing his hand. However, the rule of two was not without its flaws. Its emphasis on betrayal and secrecy often left the Sith vulnerable to internal conflict. The very nature of their philosophy meant that trust was impossible. This was evident in the strained relationship between Sidious and Dooku, as well as in Dooku's own attempts to cultivate allies like Asajj Ventress. These betrayals and counter-betrayals created instability, even as they drove the Sith toward their goals. The rule of two's impact on the Clone Wars is a reminder of the Sith's unique approach to power. Unlike the Jedi, who sought balance and harmony, the Sith thrived on chaos and conflict. Their doctrine of betrayal ensured that they were always evolving, always striving for greater power. Yet it also sowed the seeds of their eventual downfall. In their pursuit of dominance, the Sith created a cycle of destruction that could never be truly broken. In the end, the Rule of Two exemplifies the Sith's philosophy of strength through conflict. It is a doctrine that rewards cunning and ambition, even as it guarantees treachery and discord. During the Clone Wars, this philosophy was both their greatest weapon and their most profound vulnerability, shaping their actions and ensuring their legacy as one of the galaxy's most enduring forces of chaos. The Nightsisters of Dathomir, with their shadowy rituals and unparalleled command of dark magic, stood apart as one of the galaxy's most enigmatic factions during the Clone Wars. Their relationship with the Sith, particularly Darth Sidious, was a volatile mix of intrigue, manipulation, and rivalry. At the heart of this dynamic was Mother Talzin, the formidable matriarch of the Nightsisters, whose vendetta against Sidious framed much of their uneasy interactions. The Nightsisters were not Sith, but their mastery of the dark side gave them a distinct and potent role in galactic affairs. Unlike the Sith, who wielded the dark side for personal ambition, the Nightsisters channeled it through rituals, binding their magic to the energies of their homeworld. This difference in philosophy set the stage for a relationship that was as much about mutual interest as it was about mutual distrust. Mother Talzin's connection to Darth Sidious was deeply personal and filled with betrayal. Years before the Clone Wars, Talzin and Sidious had a working relationship, one based on their shared knowledge of the dark side. Talzin claimed that Sidious promised her great power, even hinting at making her his apprentice. Instead, Sidious turned against her, taking her son, Maul, as his apprentice and severing any ties with the Nightsisters. This act of treachery ignited a feud that simmered beneath the surface of galactic events. Talzin's bitterness towards Sidious defined much of the Nightsisters' actions during the Clone Wars. She used her magic to bolster her allies and retaliate against her enemies, always maneuvering to undermine Sidious's plans. Her support of Asajj Ventress, a Sith assassin cast aside by Count Dooku, was a calculated move. By empowering Ventress, Talzin sought to disrupt the Sith's balance of power and exact revenge on both Dooku and Sidious. The Sith, for their part, saw the Nightsisters as both a resource and a threat. Sidious recognized the potential of their dark magic, but he also understood the dangers of their independence. The Nightsisters' ability to create warriors like Savage Opress, a deadly enforcer imbued with immense strength, showed their capability to rival the Sith in influence. However, Sidious ensured that their power was never unchecked. When Talzin's schemes grew too bold, he authorized Dooku and General Grievous to obliterate the Nightsisters' stronghold on Dathomir. The massacre of the Nightsisters was a brutal reminder of the Sith's ruthlessness. Yet, it was not merely a show of force. By eliminating the Nightsisters, Sidious removed a wild card that threatened his carefully laid plans. Despite this, Talzin survived, continuing to challenge the Sith from the shadows. Her resurrection of Maul and her attempts to reclaim power through him were bold acts of defiance, even as they ultimately led to her destruction. The dynamic between the Sith and the Nightsisters underscores the complexities of dark side alliances. While they occasionally cooperated, their goals were fundamentally opposed. The Sith sought domination through hierarchy and control, while the Nightsisters wielded their magic to preserve their community and heritage. These differences ensured that their relationship was always fraught with tension. Mother Talzin's feud with Sidious was more than a personal vendetta. It was a clash of philosophies and power structures. Her legacy, marked by resilience and defiance, stands as a testament to the Nightsisters' unique place in the Star Wars saga. They were not merely pawns in the Sith's schemes. They were a force unto themselves, capable of shaping the galaxy in their own mysterious way. Darth Maul's re-emergence was one of the most shocking twists in the Clone Wars era, disrupting the Sith's meticulously planned schemes and altering the galactic power dynamic. Once presumed dead after his defeat by Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo, Maul's survival and return exemplified the resilience of dark side users and the unpredictability of the Force itself. Maul's fall from grace was a calculated move by his master, Darth Sidious. Sidious had groomed Maul as a weapon, not as a successor. When Maul was defeated and presumed dead, Sidious seamlessly shifted his plans, leaving no room for sentiment. But Maul, fueled by hatred and revenge, clung to life. His survival was not a testament to Sith doctrine, but a testament to his raw determination and sheer willpower. Discovered by his brother Savage Opress on the junk-strewn planet of Lotho Minor, Maul was a shadow of his former self. Years of isolation and madness had left him broken, both physically and mentally. Yet Mother Talzin and the Nightsisters restored him, not out of compassion, but as part of a larger effort to strike back at Sidious and his apprentice, Count Dooku. This restoration set Maul on a path of vengeance, but it also transformed him into an agent of chaos, a wild card in the Force's cosmic balance. Once healed, Maul wasted no time asserting his presence. He sought to reclaim his identity and position, not as a servant of Sidious, but as a rival to his former master. Maul's newfound independence defied Sith tradition. He rejected the rule of two, instead building his own power base. From forming alliances with criminal syndicates like the Pike Syndicate and Black Sun, to seizing control of Mandalore, Maul's ambition extended far beyond personal revenge. He sought to rewrite the rules of power in the galaxy. Maul's rise was not without consequences. His actions drew the attention of the Jedi, the Republic, and the Sith. For Sidious, Maul's return was an inconvenience, but not an immediate threat. Sidious viewed his former apprentice as a useful distraction, one that could potentially weaken his enemies. Yet, as Maul's power grew, so did the danger he posed. Sidious eventually intervened personally, confronting Maul and Savage on Mandalore. In a climactic duel, Savage was killed, and Maul was captured, signaling Sidious's dominance. However, Maul's capture was far from the end of his story. He escaped imprisonment, demonstrating once again his tenacity and resourcefulness. From the shadows, he continued to disrupt the Sith's plans, most notably during the siege of Mandalore. His confrontation with Ahsoka Tano and his prophetic warnings about Sidious's grand design showcased his deep understanding of the galaxy's shifting tides. Maul's return and subsequent actions reveal the inherent instability of the dark side. While the Sith prided themselves on control and calculation, Maul embodied the chaos that the dark side could unleash. He operated outside the established order, forcing both the Jedi and the Sith to contend with his unpredictable influence. In the broader narrative of the Clone Wars, Maul's story is a reminder that the Force is not bound by any one philosophy or doctrine. His survival, rise, and defiance underscore the complexity of power and the unexpected ways it can manifest. Maul may not have been the Sith's chosen instrument, but he became a pivotal force in the galaxy's unfolding drama, a wild card whose impact reverberated far beyond his time. Asajj Ventress's journey through the Clone Wars is one of transformation, loss, and ultimately redemption. From her beginnings as a deadly apprentice to Count Dooku, she evolved into a complex character whose choices defied the expectations placed upon her. Her story, woven through betrayal and resilience, is a testament to the strength found in forging one's own path. Ventress was born on Dathomir, a planet steeped in the dark magics of the Nightsisters. Her early years were shaped by tragedy, losing her family to violence and being taken in by Jedi Knight Kai Narek. As Narek's Padawan, Ventress displayed remarkable potential, but her destiny was diverted when Narek was killed. Alone and consumed by grief, she turned to the dark side, where her pain became the fuel for her survival. When Ventress came under the tutelage of Count Dooku, she found a master who recognized her potential, but regarded her as a tool rather than an equal. As his apprentice, Ventress became a deadly enforcer of the Separatists' will, striking fear into the hearts of the Republic and Jedi alike. Her duels with Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan Kenobi showcased her formidable skills and her unrelenting drive for dominance. Yet, her allegiance to Dooku was never secure. The Sith's rule of two ensured that Ventress was expendable. When she began to grow too powerful and threaten Dooku's position, Sidious ordered her elimination. Betrayed and cast aside, Ventress returned to Dathomir, seeking refuge among the Nightsisters. This turning point in her life marked the beginning of her transformation from a pawn of the Sith to an independent force. Under the guidance of Mother Talzin, Ventress plotted revenge against Dooku. Her return to Dathomir rekindled her connection to her roots, and her time with the Nightsisters revealed a more vulnerable, human side of her character. However, tragedy struck again when Dooku retaliated, leading to the massacre of the Nightsisters and the destruction of her sanctuary. Despite these losses, Ventress refused to succumb to despair. She became a bounty hunter, carving out a new identity for herself. Free from the constraints of the Sith and the Nightsisters, Ventress embraced her autonomy. Her work as a bounty hunter often brought her into contact with figures from her past, including the Jedi, where her interactions began to show shades of morality and honor that had been buried under years of darkness. Her redemption arc reached its zenith during her alliance with Quinlan Vos, a Jedi Knight who sought her help in assassinating Count Dooku. Though their partnership began with mistrust, Ventress and Vos developed a bond that transcended their initial goals. She taught Vos to embrace the dark side without being consumed by it, a reflection of her own hard-won balance. Their relationship was transformative for Ventress, allowing her to confront her pain and find a sense of purpose beyond vengeance. Ultimately, Ventress's life ended in sacrifice. In a climactic confrontation with Dooku, she gave her life to save Vos, demonstrating the depth of her transformation. Her death was not in vain, as it marked the culmination of her journey from darkness to redemption. Ventress's story is a poignant reminder of the power of choice and the possibility of change, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Her path from a Sith pawn to an independent hero resonates deeply, illustrating the enduring struggle between light and dark within every soul. She was not defined by the darkness she wielded, but by her ability to rise above it, leaving a legacy of courage and resilience that continues to inspire. Beneath the surface of battles and politics, the Clone Wars were imbued with profound mystical elements that hinted at the Force's enigmatic and far-reaching influence. Stories like Mortis and the World Between Worlds added layers of spiritual depth to the conflict, revealing the Force as more than a tool for the Jedi or Sith. These episodes provided glimpses into the cosmic balance, challenging our understanding of free will, destiny, and the nature of existence itself. The story of Mortis stands as one of the most enigmatic chapters in the Clone Wars saga. When Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Ahsoka Tano were drawn to a mysterious realm beyond ordinary space. They encountered three powerful beings: the Father, the Daughter, and the Son. These figures represented the light, the dark, and the balance of the Force. Mortis was not merely a physical place, but a manifestation of the Force's essence, a domain where time and space seemed irrelevant. Anakin's encounter with the Father revealed his potential as the Chosen One, destined to bring balance to the Force. However, the vision of Mortis also foreshadowed his eventual fall to darkness. The Son's corruption of Ahsoka and Anakin's fleeting control over both the Daughter and the Son served as harrowing reminders of how precarious balance truly is. The episode left the Jedi with more questions than answers, underscoring their limited understanding of the Force's vast complexities. While Mortis explored the philosophical and moral dilemmas of the Force, the world between worlds delved into its temporal and spatial dimensions. Introduced later in Star Wars Rebels, this mystical plane was a nexus connecting moments in time, where actions taken could ripple across history. Though not directly tied to the Clone Wars, its connection to the era was undeniable, as it provided insights into events shaped by the conflict and its key players. The world between worlds raised profound questions about the Force's nature and its role in shaping fate. Could individuals truly change the past, or were they merely instruments of a larger, predetermined design? These questions were at the heart of Ezra Bridger's journey through this realm, as he grappled with the temptation to alter key moments in galactic history. His experience emphasized the responsibility that came with understanding the Force's mysteries, reminding viewers that even immense power required restraint and wisdom. The inclusion of these mystical elements in the Clone Wars highlighted a crucial aspect of Star Wars. The Force is not a monolith. It transcends the binary conflicts of Jedi and Sith, reflecting the complexity of the galaxy itself. These stories also served as a counterpoint to the mechanized, impersonal nature of the Clone Wars. While armies clashed and strategies unfolded, Mortis and the world between worlds reminded us that the Force remained the galaxy's true heartbeat, governing events in ways often unseen. These mystical tales also illuminated the hubris of the Jedi Order. Their focus on tangible victories blinded them to the deeper spiritual truths of the Force. By the time the Jedi realized how little they understood, it was too late to avert their downfall. The mysticism of the Clone Wars offers a haunting reminder that some truths lie beyond comprehension, existing only to challenge our perception of reality. Mortis and the world between worlds are not mere stories. They are parables, urging us to seek understanding while accepting the mystery. Through these lenses, the Clone Wars are elevated from a mere galactic struggle to a profound exploration of the Force's infinite complexity. The execution of Order 66 marked a devastating turning point in galactic history, bringing an abrupt and catastrophic end to the Jedi Order. Yet for all its suddenness, questions linger. Could the Jedi have foreseen this betrayal? The ancient prophecies they so often pondered contained warnings of a profound calamity. Still, the Jedi's own hubris and the shroud of the dark side blinded them to the threat growing in plain sight. Central to the discussion is the prophecy of the Chosen One. The ancient Jedi texts foretold a being who would bring balance to the Force. Many believed Anakin Skywalker to be that figure, but their interpretation of balance was flawed. The Jedi equated balance with the eradication of the Sith, failing to consider that balance might necessitate the fall of their own order. This narrow view created a vulnerability, as they were unable to see the full scope of the prophecy's implications. Adding to their missteps was the Jedi Council's dismissal of more cryptic warnings. The holocrons and archives of the Jedi contained records of seers and mystics who spoke of a great betrayal from within. Some visions were eerily specific, referencing armies turning on their masters and the rise of a shadow from within the Republic. Yet, these warnings were often deemed too vague or symbolic to act upon. The Jedi Council, rooted in pragmatism, preferred tangible threats over esoteric foresight. Palpatine exploited this blind spot masterfully. Through his dual identity as Supreme Chancellor and Darth Sidious, he carefully orchestrated a scenario where the Jedi would see themselves as indispensable to the Republic. By appointing them as generals in the Clone Wars, he tied their fate to the war effort. This move ensured the Jedi were spread thin, focused more on external conflicts than introspection or the study of prophecy. The clones themselves were another overlooked element of the Jedi's downfall. From the beginning, their creation was shrouded in secrecy, and the Jedi accepted them without the scrutiny such an extraordinary development warranted. Hints of their true purpose were scattered throughout the war: their loyalty to the Chancellor, their inhibitor chips, and even their training to respond to specific command protocols. Yet, these red flags were consistently ignored in favor of the immediate need for soldiers. The role of the Sith in clouding the Jedi's foresight cannot be overstated. Through dark side manipulation, Sidious ensured that the Jedi were blind to his schemes. This was not just a matter of skillful deception, but also a reflection of how deeply the Sith understood the Jedi's weaknesses. The Sith knew that the Jedi, preoccupied with maintaining their role as peacekeepers, would overlook subtle shifts in the Force until it was too late. Order 66, when issued, felt sudden to many. However, for those who study the era closely, it was the culmination of years of calculated manipulation and ignored warnings. The betrayal was not an unforeseen storm, but a slow, methodical erosion of trust and awareness. Ancient prophecies spoke of darkness and upheaval, but the Jedi, trapped by their dogma and reliance on tradition, failed to see their immediate relevance. In the aftermath, it is clear that the Jedi could have done more to heed the warnings embedded in their own lore. Their archives were a treasure trove of insights into the Force, yet their focus on the present war prevented them from engaging with these teachings meaningfully. The lesson of Order 66 is not merely one of betrayal, but also of the cost of ignoring the past and its wisdom. The tragic irony of Order 66 lies in its inevitability. The Jedi's inability to adapt, their dismissal of ancient prophecies, and their failure to see beyond the veil of the dark side sealed their fate. It stands as a haunting reminder of how even the most powerful and wise can fall when they refuse to heed the signs around them. Clone Force 99, better known as the Bad Batch, occupies a fascinating niche within the galaxy's most turbulent era. Unlike their clone brethren, these genetically altered soldiers emerged as an anomaly in the Kaminoan cloning process. However, their imperfections proved to be their greatest strengths, setting them apart as a group uniquely equipped to handle the challenges of the Clone Wars and its aftermath. Each member of the Bad Batch is a testament to the complexities of genetic engineering. While their mutations deviated from the Kaminoan standard clone template, they brought enhanced abilities that made the squad formidable in battle. Hunter, their leader, possessed heightened sensory perception, allowing him to track even the faintest signals with uncanny precision. Wrecker's enormous strength turned him into a living battering ram, capable of demolishing obstacles both physical and metaphorical. Tech's unmatched intellect and analytical mind made him indispensable in unraveling complex problems, while Crosshair's precision as a marksman elevated him to a deadly status. Later, the addition of Echo, a clone whose life was irrevocably altered by cybernetic enhancements, added a layer of resilience and adaptability that made the group whole. Beyond their individual capabilities, what truly set the Bad Batch apart was their ability to operate outside conventional frameworks. While standard clones were designed to follow orders without question, Clone Force 99 embodied a spirit of independence. This trait became a defining characteristic, allowing them to question authority and adapt to rapidly changing circumstances. In a galaxy spiraling into chaos, such adaptability proved invaluable. Their origins, however, were not without controversy. The Kaminoans viewed the Bad Batch as a deviation from their quest for genetic perfection. In their eyes, the clones were tools to be manufactured to exact specifications, devoid of personality or individual ambition. Clone Force 99's existence challenged this notion, demonstrating that imperfection could lead to extraordinary results. This dynamic underscored a broader theme within the Clone Wars, the tension between conformity and individuality. Within the larger conflict, the Bad Batch served as a microcosm of the growing unrest among the clones. Many began to wrestle with their programmed identities, questioning their purpose and the morality of the war. The Bad Batch, free from the inhibitor chips that controlled their counterparts, became a symbol of what the clones might achieve if given autonomy. Their actions, often guided by moral conviction rather than blind obedience, highlighted the potential for clones to forge their own destinies. This independence, however, placed Clone Force 99 at odds with both the Republic and the emerging Empire. As the galaxy transitioned from war to Imperial rule, the clones faced obsolescence. The Empire's preference for conscripted soldiers signaled the end of the Kaminoan cloning program and the gradual erosion of clone autonomy. For the Bad Batch, this shift marked a turning point. No longer bound by the structures of the Republic, they became nomads in a galaxy that viewed them as relics of a bygone era. One of the most poignant aspects of their story lies in their relationship with Omega, the young, unaltered clone who joined their ranks. Omega represented the innocence and potential of the cloning process, untouched by the war's brutalities. Her bond with the Bad Batch brought out their protective instincts, but it also forced them to confront what it meant to truly care for someone beyond their squad. Through her, the Bad Batch evolved from soldiers to guardians, redefining their purpose in a galaxy that no longer valued them. The Bad Batch's story resonates because it asks profound questions about identity and purpose. Are individuals defined by their origins, or can they transcend the circumstances of their creation? For Clone Force 99, the answer lay in their actions. They chose to fight for what they believed was right, even when it meant standing apart from the systems that created them. Their journey, filled with challenges and moments of profound growth, serves as a reminder of the power of choice in shaping destiny. In the broader narrative of the Clone Wars, the Bad Batch symbolizes the possibility of forging a path outside prescribed roles. Their legacy, built on courage, loyalty, and adaptability, ensures that their story will endure as one of the most compelling chapters in the history of the clones. As they navigated a galaxy in turmoil, they left an indelible mark, proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, individuals could rise above their origins and define their own fate. The Zillow Beast, a creature of unparalleled might and mystery, stands as a powerful symbol within the complex web of the Clone Wars. Unearthed during a Republic operation on Malastare, the creature's emergence raised profound questions about the nature of power, the arrogance of sentient beings, and the galaxy's delicate balance between light and dark. Its story, though brief, echoes with thematic depth, offering a natural counterpoint to the artificial conflicts orchestrated by the Sith and Jedi alike. The Zillow Beast's origins trace back to a bygone age when Malastár's surface was dominated by colossal creatures and untouched ecosystems. This apex predator's resilience was unmatched, its scales impervious to any known weaponry, a biological marvel seemingly crafted to endure the ravages of time and conflict. Its reawakening, however, was no accident. A high-yield electroproton bomb deployed to neutralize separatist forces inadvertently breached the creature's subterranean slumber. This act of technological overreach mirrors the hubris that defined much of the galaxy's leadership during the Clone Wars. Once unleashed, the Zillow Beast wreaked havoc, not out of malice, but out of instinct. Its massive form, cutting through the Republic forces, became a stark reminder of nature's raw and unyielding power, a force that neither the Jedi's meditations nor the Sith's machinations could control. The Republic's decision to transport the creature to Coruscant under the guise of scientific study revealed yet another layer of arrogance. Chancellor Palpatine's interest in the beast's near-impenetrable armor hinted at his constant pursuit of ultimate power, driven by his desire to shape the galaxy according to his dark designs. Yet beneath the Zillow Beast's immense strength lay an even greater truth. Its mere existence symbolized a challenge to the galaxy's obsession with control. The Jedi, with their doctrine of balance and harmony, failed to see the creature as a harbinger of nature's will. Instead, they were complicit in its capture, highlighting their growing detachment from the natural order they claimed to protect. The Sith, conversely, sought to exploit the creature, viewing it as a tool to solidify their dominance. Neither side could fully grasp that the Zillow Beast was not a pawn in their conflict. It was a force unto itself. The tragic conclusion of the Zillow Beast's tale came with its demise, ordered by Palpatine after it rampaged through Coruscant. Poisoned and subdued, its towering body fell, marking the end of a brief yet impactful chapter in the Clone Wars. However, even in death, the Zillow Beast left behind unanswered questions and a haunting legacy. Its genetic material, secretly preserved by Palpatine, hinted at potential future experiments, a chilling reminder of how the galaxy's leaders sought to harness and distort natural power for their ends. In the broader narrative, the Zillow Beast serves as a mirror to the Jedi and Sith's eternal struggle. It embodies the raw, unfiltered chaos of the Force, unaligned with either side, but intrinsically connected to both. Its resistance to control symbolizes the inherent futility of the galaxy's attempts to dominate nature, a poignant lesson that was ignored in the relentless pursuit of war. The Zillow Beast's story reminds us that the Force is not limited to lightsabers and philosophical debates. It is present in every living thing, manifesting in ways that transcend the narrow definitions imposed by the galaxy's warring factions. As the Clone Wars raged on, the lessons of the Zillow Beast faded into obscurity, overshadowed by battles and betrayals. Yet, its story remains a potent allegory of balance and hubris, a reminder that the greatest threats to the galaxy often stem not from external enemies, but from the unchecked ambitions of those who seek to reshape it in their image. The Zillow Beast was nature's answer to a galaxy consumed by conflict, a fleeting glimpse of a larger, more profound truth that neither the Jedi nor the Sith were prepared to face. The execution of Order 66 marked the darkest moment in Jedi history, a coordinated strike that swept through the galaxy with brutal efficiency. This act of betrayal was more than the result of Sith cunning. It was the culmination of decades of systemic failure within the Jedi Order. In their hubris, the Jedi had become blind to the warning signs, their vision clouded by war, politics, and misplaced trust. The immediate aftermath of Order 66 shattered not only the Jedi as an institution, but also their identity as guardians of peace. When the clones turned on their Jedi commanders, the speed and precision of the betrayal left little room for resistance. Masters, knights, and Padawans alike were overwhelmed, their once loyal troops executing the Sith's will with chilling obedience. From the battlefields of Utapau to the dense jungles of Felucia, the betrayal was near universal. Even the mightiest Jedi, warriors tempered by years of combat in the Clone Wars, fell to the sheer numbers and unrelenting precision of their own armies. The survival of any Jedi in such chaos was nothing short of miraculous. Some managed to escape through sheer instinct and the Force's guidance, but even those who survived found themselves hunted relentlessly. The galaxy, which had once revered the Jedi, was now fed a carefully crafted narrative of their treachery. Holonet broadcasts painted them as enemies of the Republic, a manipulation of truth orchestrated by Palpatine to justify their extermination. For the few who eluded death, the galaxy had become a hostile place. Survivors scattered, some retreating to remote corners of the galaxy, while others adopted new identities to blend into the very populations they once served. For these remnants, survival meant abandoning the ideals that had defined their lives. Lightsabers, once symbols of hope and justice, were hidden or destroyed, their presence too dangerous in a galaxy ruled by fear. Yet, the Purge's impact went beyond the physical destruction of the Jedi. It was a symbolic severance of their connection to the galaxy and the Force itself. The Jedi Order, as it had existed for millennia, was a rigid institution that failed to adapt to the challenges of a changing galaxy. Their role as generals during the Clone Wars, their alignment with a faltering Republic, and their inability to foresee the Sith's grand design were not merely tactical errors, but profound failures of vision. Palpatine's calculated manipulation had exposed and exploited these weaknesses. By turning the clones into unwitting instruments of genocide, he ensured that the Jedi's downfall came not from an external enemy, but from within their own ranks. This betrayal was not just a physical defeat, it was a moral and spiritual collapse. However, even in the face of such devastation, the Jedi Purge was not an absolute end. Scattered as they were, the surviving Jedi carried fragments of their heritage. Some, like Obi-Wan Kenobi and Yoda, found new purpose in exile, preparing for a distant future where they might train the next generation. Others struggled with their own sense of guilt and failure, questioning their role in the galaxy's descent into darkness. The Purge also marked the beginning of a shift in how the Jedi would be remembered. For those who survived, their existence became a living testament to the Order's resilience, even in its lowest moments. Yet the loss was undeniable. The temples that once stood as beacons of the Force now lay empty or repurposed by the Empire. The Jedi Order, as the galaxy had known it, was no more. The immediate fallout of Order 66 was devastating, but it also laid the groundwork for something new. The galaxy, though engulfed in darkness, still held a glimmer of hope, hidden in the survivors, in the teachings they carried, and in the belief that one day the light would rise again. For the Jedi, scattered and broken, the question was not merely of survival, but of rediscovery, of their purpose, their identity, and the vision they had so tragically lost. Anakin Skywalker's descent into Darth Vader is one of the most heartbreaking arcs in galactic history, an intricate web of love, ambition, betrayal, and manipulation that forever altered the galaxy's destiny. Anakin was not merely a victim of circumstance. His choices, fears, and vulnerabilities played into the hands of a master manipulator, Darth Sidious. The story of Anakin's fall is a stark reminder of how the road to darkness is often paved with good intentions. As a boy, Anakin was heralded as the Chosen One, prophesied to bring balance to the Force. This label, though imbued with hope, became a burden. The Jedi Order, blinded by their interpretation of the prophecy, placed immense expectations on him, seeing him not as an individual but as a symbol of their salvation. Yet they simultaneously feared his unorthodox path, creating a chasm of mistrust that would later fuel his disillusionment. Anakin's inner turmoil was further compounded by his relationships. His love for Padme Amidala was his greatest strength, but also his greatest vulnerability. Unlike the detached, disciplined life the Jedi demanded, Anakin craved connection and belonging. His marriage to Padme, kept secret from the Jedi, became both a sanctuary and a source of anxiety. When visions of her death in childbirth plagued him, Anakin's desperation to protect her opened a pathway for Sidious's influence. Darth Sidious, ever the cunning orchestrator, exploited Anakin's fear with precision. By planting seeds of doubt about the Jedi's intentions and offering forbidden knowledge of the dark side, Sidious positioned himself as the only figure Anakin could trust. The Sith Lord's promise of saving Padme was the hook that ensnared Anakin, but it was his manipulation of the Jedi's perceived hypocrisy that sealed his fall. The Jedi Council's treatment of Anakin exacerbated his growing mistrust. They placed him on the Council, but refused to grant him the rank of Master, a decision that bruised his pride and deepened his resentment. When Mace Windu dismissed Anakin's plea to spare Palpatine and instead moved to execute him, it solidified Anakin's belief that the Jedi were no better than the Sith. In that moment, his choice to intervene wasn't merely about loyalty to Sidious, it was the culmination of years of feeling misunderstood and undervalued. The transformation into Darth Vader was not instantaneous. Anakin's first act as Vader, the massacre of the Jedi younglings in the temple, marked a point of no return. Yet, even in his darkest moments, flickers of Anakin's humanity remained. His inner conflict would persist, buried beneath the fearsome armor and the persona of the Dark Lord of the Sith. Anakin's fall was not just a personal tragedy. It symbolized the failure of the Jedi Order and the Republic. It marked the triumph of the Sith and the rise of the Galactic Empire, a regime that plunged the galaxy into fear and oppression. Yet, his story also carried a glimmer of hope. The love that led to his downfall would ultimately be the key to his redemption through his son, Luke Skywalker. The implications of Anakin's transformation into Vader resonated far beyond his lifetime. It served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of fear, attachment, and unchecked power. It also highlighted the importance of compassion and understanding, qualities that could have changed his fate had they been more present in the Jedi Order. Anakin Skywalker's journey from hero to villain is a complex narrative of choices, consequences, and the enduring struggle between light and dark. While his fall brought immense suffering to the galaxy, it also set the stage for the ultimate restoration of balance, a reminder that even in the shadow of darkness, the light of redemption is never entirely extinguished. The end of the Clone Wars marked a significant shift in the galaxy's history. The Clone Army, once hailed as the defenders of the Republic, became instruments of oppression under the newly established Galactic Empire. This transition was neither accidental nor abrupt. It was the culmination of Palpatine's meticulous strategy to consolidate power and eliminate opposition. At the heart of this transformation was the issuance of Order 66. The clones, bound by their bioengineered loyalty, and the inhibitor chips implanted within their brains turned against the Jedi without hesitation. This single act eradicated the Republic's most stalwart protectors and solidified the clones' new role under Palpatine. The same soldiers who once fought valiantly alongside the Jedi now became enforcers of Imperial will, their identities overshadowed by their programming. The shift from the Republic to the Empire was not merely political, but also psychological. The clones were conditioned to follow orders without question, a trait exploited by the Empire to maintain control. The individuality some clones had begun to develop during the war was systematically stripped away. They were no longer viewed as soldiers with names and personalities, but as faceless tools of subjugation. Even their iconic armor was gradually replaced with designs reflecting the Empire's authoritarian aesthetic, symbolizing their complete assimilation into the new regime. For many citizens of the galaxy, the clones became the most visible representation of the Empire's oppressive might. Their presence in occupied worlds served as a constant reminder of Imperial authority. The clones enforced curfews, suppressed dissent, and carried out orders with cold efficiency. Yet beneath the surface, the toll of these actions on the clones themselves remained an unspoken tragedy. For those few who retained fragments of individuality, the transition was a profound betrayal of the principles they had once fought to uphold. The Empire's reliance on the clones, however, was not without its limits. As the years passed, the genetic template provided by Jango Fett began to show signs of degradation. Clones aged rapidly and were phased out in favor of conscripted stormtroopers, cheaper and easier to control en masse. This marked the final indignity for the clones, many of whom were discarded or relegated to menial roles. The Empire's cold pragmatism left little room for loyalty or gratitude, even for those who had served so obediently. The legacy of the clones' role in the Empire remains a complex chapter in galactic history. While they were instrumental in enforcing Palpatine's rule, their story is one of manipulation and tragedy. The clones were neither villains nor heroes in the traditional sense, but victims of a larger design that treated them as expendable assets. Their transformation into tools of oppression illustrates the devastating consequences of unchecked power and the loss of autonomy. In the grand narrative of the galaxy, the clones' journey from defenders of the Republic to enforcers of tyranny serves as a cautionary tale. It underscores the fragility of identity and the ease with which ideals can be corrupted under the guise of order. Even as the galaxy moved forward, the echoes of their actions and the tragedy of their fate remained etched in history. Ahsoka Tano's journey after the Clone Wars exemplifies resilience and the enduring spirit of hope in a galaxy shrouded by darkness. Having left the Jedi Order before its collapse, Ahsoka found herself navigating an uncertain path, one that ultimately positioned her as a symbol of defiance against tyranny and a beacon for those seeking light in the shadows of the Empire. When Order 66 was executed, Ahsoka narrowly escaped death alongside Captain Rex, whose inhibitor chip she removed to restore his free will. Their survival marked not just a victory over the immediate threat, but a profound personal triumph against the machinery of manipulation that had consumed so many lives. Ahsoka's refusal to succumb to despair, even after witnessing the Republic's fall and the betrayal of her former comrades, defined her character in the turbulent years that followed. In the wake of the Jedi Purge, Ahsoka assumed a new identity, shedding her former title as a Jedi Padawan. Operating in secrecy, she became a silent protector for the oppressed, using her combat skills, resourcefulness, and unyielding moral compass to aid those suffering under Imperial rule. Her actions were not driven by a need for vengeance or glory, but by an unwavering commitment to justice. This quiet heroism set her apart from other survivors of the war, many of whom struggled with bitterness or a desire for retribution. Ahsoka's involvement with the burgeoning rebellion further cemented her legacy. Adopting the alias Fulcrum, she acted as a key intelligence agent, coordinating efforts to resist the Empire's expansion. Her strategic insight and ability to inspire others became invaluable assets to rebel cells across the galaxy. Yet, even as she assumed a leadership role, Ahsoka remained grounded, never allowing the weight of the struggle to compromise her principles or her belief in the inherent goodness of others. Perhaps Ahsoka's most profound impact lay in her encounters with those who had lost their way. Her fateful confrontation with her former master, now the Sith Lord Darth Vader, epitomized the tragic consequences of the Clone Wars. Despite the danger and heartbreak, Ahsoka faced Anakin with both strength and compassion, embodying the hope that redemption, however distant, was still possible. Her refusal to give up on Anakin, even when confronted with the monstrosity he had become, spoke to the core of her character, a belief in the power of choice and the potential for light to pierce even the deepest darkness. Throughout her journey, Ahsoka defied the expectations placed upon her, both as a former Jedi and as an individual shaped by war. Her story resonated not just with those she directly aided, but with countless others who heard of her deeds and drew strength from her example. As the galaxy transitioned through the chaos of the Empire and beyond, Ahsoka's legacy persisted. She became more than a warrior or a leader. She became a symbol of resilience, integrity, and the unyielding belief in a brighter future. For those who found themselves lost in the aftermath of the Clone Wars, Ahsoka Tano's legacy served as a guiding star, a reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope could light the way. Captain Rex embodies the power of individuality and moral conviction, even when confronted by programming designed to suppress it. As one of the most prominent members of the clone army, Rex was bred for loyalty and conditioned to serve the Republic without question. Yet, as the Republic crumbled and Order 66 unfolded, Rex demonstrated a defiance that few clones could achieve. Rex's resistance began before the activation of the inhibitor chips that drove clones to betray the Jedi. His close relationships with Jedi like Anakin Skywalker and Ahsoka Tano gave him a unique perspective on leadership and camaraderie. Unlike many clones who saw Jedi as mere generals, Rex considered them partners and friends, a distinction that profoundly influenced his decisions during the galaxy's darkest hour. When Order 66 was issued, Rex's chip briefly overrode his will, compelling him to turn against Ahsoka. Yet even under its influence, he resisted, warning her of the danger before the programming took full control. After Ahsoka incapacitated him and removed the chip, Rex regained his agency, cementing his role as one of the few clones who resisted the Empire's control. Rex's loyalty shifted from the Republic to the ideals and people he believed in. Rejecting the Empire and deserting the clone army was a dangerous decision, but it reflected his unwavering moral clarity. In the aftermath, Rex joined forces with like-minded individuals like Gregor and Wolf, forming a small enclave of dissenters. He later became instrumental in the early rebellion, offering tactical expertise and inspiring resistance against the Empire. His journey symbolizes resilience in the face of oppression and the enduring fight for autonomy. The Clone Wars, initially framed as a battle for democracy, exposed the Republic's deep flaws: corruption, systemic inequities, and waning accountability. The Jedi, entangled in military operations, saw their role as peacekeepers diminish. Their alliance with the Republic, a system increasingly viewed as hypocritical, eroded trust, and created fertile ground for rebellion. Many separatist systems opposed the Republic due to genuine grievances, not loyalty to the Sith. Their mistrust deepened as the Republic became the Empire, fueling rebellion. Leaders like Mon Mothma and Ahsoka Tano bridged gaps, fostering resistance and hope.